Welcome to Noob-Splaining. My name is Wolf. If this is your first time here, this is where I explain the totally over-the-top world that nerds like me love so much, that is the Warhammer 40,000 universe. So click that subscribe button, settle in, and prepare for a Noob-Splaining session. Right, let's get on with this video. During the War of the Beast, which I will cover in more detail in another video, but put shortly, a massive Orc war boss arose on TONOR and rampaged across the galaxy and nearly destroyed Terra. Anyway, during the War of the Beast, the Space Marine chapter of the Imperial Fist got their asses absolutely handed to them on TONOR and lost many Astartes. This is mainly down to the fact Imperial Fists are only good at defending and making sandcastles, allegedly. The chapter master at the time realised that small kill teams that were able to infiltrate and decapitate any attacking Xeno's army by, well, literally decapitating its leadership is what was needed. Not having enough time to create a totally new chapter and recognising the need for experienced Space Marines, he put out a call to other chapters to donate some Space Marines to serve in these new kill team units. Now the High Lords of Terror, being paranoid and also dicks, naturally started to throw spanners in the works, because that's what all politicians do whenever somebody else has a good idea that they can't steal. To settle this matter, it was agreed this new chapter of kill teams would be led by a Space Marine, but under the banner and control of the Inquisition, eventually picking up the name of the Deathwatch. The newest chapter of Space Marines was born. Made up of the best drawn from pretty much every chapter out there, the Deathwatch are the SEAL Team 6 of Space Marines. The idea being, just like the first commando groups of World War II, the Space Marines from the different chapters all pool their different fighting styles and combat doctrine to either complement each other's fighting style or create totally brand new tactics. Now this must be a difficult concept for Ultramarines to accept, as they won't even take a crap unless the Codex Astartes tells them to. The Codex Astartes being the book that is the dummy's guide on how to be a Space Marine in a war zone. Less Codex compliant chapters like Space Marines would absolutely relish the idea of swapping tips and tricks with other Marines of other chapters on how best to fuck up the enemy's day, especially while sharing a cold war with them. Since their inception, there pretty much hasn't been a decent invading Xenos army that the Deathwatch haven't deployed a kill team or 20 against. But seeing as most large-scale invasions are either Orcs or Tyranids, the vast majority of their tactics and equipment was created with these two factions as the primary targets. In the lore, they have special weapons that do additional damage to all vehicles and ammunition designed to disrupt the Tyranid synaptic link. There have been many instances of kill teams boarding the lead Tyranid vessel, and in a heroic last stand, and often also a sacrifice, have taken out the head Tyranid, allowing the Imperial forces to then systematically take down the rest of the Tyranids, who are now directionless, mindless creatures working on instinct. They will also happily use Xenos weapons and technology, bioweapons, toxins, and pretty much do or use anything the Geneva Convention says you can't. When the Space Wolves doubled down on the word wolf when naming everything, the Deathwatch did the same with the word watch. They have watch commanders, watch captains, watch lieutenants, watch fortresses, watch towers, and watch who you're looking at before I glass you cunt. Being the special forces, they are organised in subtly different ways to other chapters. Most chapters have the first company as the veteran company. Next they have several companies as battle companies, then 3 companies that can be best described as a general infantry company, a melee infantry company, and a heavy weapons infantry company that are used to reinforce or replenish the battle companies, and finally the 10th company, the scout company, which is where wannabe Marine neophytes start out. As each member of the Deathwatch is a veteran, and they don't have neophytes, every company is basically the same, and all the companies make use of Marines in power armour, Marines in Terminator armour, as well as Marines on bike. In fact, they make so much extensive use of Terminator armour, it is rumoured they have more Terminator armour than most chapters put together. Just like any good Special Forces unit that is depicted in the media, they paint their armour mostly black. I say mostly, this is where some of the lore gets fucking stupid. It's painted black to honour the Emperor, which makes me wonder why don't all Space Marines paint their armour black, like the Dark Angels do pre-Horus Heresy. Turns out it's mostly painted black, as painting it all black is an offence to the machine spirit, which is the semi-AI operating system of the armour, yet painting it black honours the Emperor. Go figure. I suppose this explains why the Dark Angels went from black to dark green. They then paint their left arm silver, because when fighting behind enemy lines, you want a decent portion of your armour to reflect every piece of fucking light in a 10-mile radius. Their right shoulder pad stays with the markings of their original chapter, adding even more colour for when sneaking around enemy lines. But then this is 40k and everything is over the top, rather than grounded in a semblance of reality. I mean, the biggest titan out there, the Imperator, is effectively a walking cathedral covered in guns. Now the Deathwatch were created for one thing and one thing alone, killing Xenos, just like the Grey Knights were created for killing demons. Seeing a Deathwatch army take on Chaos Space Marines makes my blood boil in a similar fashion to seeing Grey Knights take on Orcs. But hey, Games Workshop have models to sell and money to make, and at the end of the day, it's just a game. I just wish the lore would sometimes be more in line with what really happens. The lore may say X, but the reality of the actual game is often Y. Now, for most chapters, it is an honour to send some of their best warriors to serve in the Deathwatch. For others, it's a way of getting rid of the arrogant ones for a while, and for a small handful of chapters, being sent to serve in the Deathwatch is a punishment used when an experienced Marine makes some kind of mistake, like leaving the toilet seat up when the Sisters of Battle are visiting. There is no set time for the length of service in the Deathwatch. It's pretty much until that Marine is no longer needed. In the lore, any Marines returned to their chapter are supposed to swear an oath of silence. Now this seems stupid to me, as in real life, any Special Forces operator who returns to their basic unit would take with them and teach their mates some of the tactics and methods they use. Plus, if you ever played Dawn of War 2, you'll know that Scout Sergeant Cyrus reminds us he was in the Deathwatch every moment he can. In fact, he reminds us more often than a fireman tells you he's a fireman. They also have a manic-depressive dreadnought named Chiron from the Lamenters chapter that believes he is the last surviving member of his chapter, regardless what he is told about the chapter being rebuilt. He thinks people are just trying to cheer him up. I can't help but think of Eeyore, but with battleship levels of armour plating and big fucking guns. Now, being a top-tier Special Forces unit, they get access to all the best gear, like the Stalker bolt gun, which is a bolter with a scope on it, which, considering they have targeters built into their helmets, and Space Marines can see further without their helmets on, it seems to me that a Stalker bolt gun is about as much use as a plastic sandwich. Or they did until 10th came along and somebody quietly deleted it from their codex. They also had access to unique and powerful ammunition types, like crack and bolter rounds, but this is now in the form of stratagems, preventing the entire army using them every turn, which is one hell of a hit from that dreaded nerf ban. The whole idea with them is that while the Imperial Guard or normal Space Marines chapters are dealing with the bulk of whichever invading Xenos army is wanting its ass kicked this week, the Deathwatch will deploy some kill teams that sneak around the back and take out the enemy leadership like some glamorised version of the SAS or Delta Force in a movie. Their whole lore, while appearing compelling to the average person, smacks of someone made it up who has no military experience at all and only a vague idea of what Special Forces actually fucking do. And if this was your initial thought, your belief in this would be understandable. In reality, the Deathwatch came about due to the game Inquisitor, that was a 54mm scale roleplay game set in the 40k universe. Having only 15 different models, the developers knew it would be foolish to not include a Space Marine. The initial plan was to not link that Space Marine to any one specific chapter, allowing both players of Inquisitor and the general collectors and painters to paint it in any colour they wanted. Imagine that, a game that has Space Marines in that are not Ultramarines. That would never happen today. As the rules progressed, it was clear the game was about stealth, and apart from the Space Wolves, Raven Guard and Alpha Legion, Space Marines in full power armour can't do stealth. So the concept of the Deathwatch was born, a chapter that specialised in stealth and killing Xenos, with the idea they are veterans from an existing chapter and retain one shoulder pad in their original colours, still allowing the idea that players or painters can choose which chapter they're originally from. This is also another example of the way Games Workshop designs models, then creates the lore around it. They knew they wanted a Marine. They had a basic idea about what the Deathwatch were, although they had no name for them yet. They made the model, then fully fleshed out who and what the Deathwatch are, including the name. Now, in my opinion, they did a good job of creating these kill teams from a media-fueled glamorised point of view and from the lore they created. For a start, their standard list consists of squads of veteran Marines, squads of Terminators, who are technically veteran Marines, and veteran squads on bikes. Or you can create a kill team that has veteran Marines and Terminators and bikes all in the same squad. I'm not sure if the tactical advantage of limiting the speed of the bikes to that of the rest of the squad to maintain unit coherency is a bonus, but the normal power armoured Marines do get used to the toughness of the bikes and Terminators when being shot at to reflect the fact that the bikes and Terminators are fucking bullet magnets. This mixed squad of Terminator bikes and veteran Marines also have a special rule that classes every unit in the squad as infantry, meaning the whole squad, including the bikes, can all be loaded into any Deathwatch transport. No other Space Marines can put Terminators in anything except Land Raiders, and no Space Marines at all, in fact no army at all, can put bikes in any transport. While an interesting rule, it also summons up a comical image of a giant hulking Terminator all curled up to fit inside a rhino, with the open end of a Space Marine bike exhaust just inches away from his face, leaving the Terminator huffing diesel exhaust fumes. They also have a few other mixed squads, allowing to mix up similar types of Primaris into one squad. It does lead to some funky looking squads, but I'm not sure mixing melee and ranged in one squad is such a good idea. Generally in 40k, Jack of all trades is a master of none, and your squad should focus on either ranged or melee, as only a handful of units across the whole setting can do both comfortably, and they are pretty much all custodians or Grey Knights. Interestingly, if you're going to supplement your Deathwatch list with some units from the standard Space Marine list, you pretty much can't take any of the original Firstborn units, but can take any of the new and improved Primaris units. In fact, there is a competition-winning army list of Deathwatch that contains no Deathwatch units at all, and just uses Primaris squads and vehicles along with the Deathwatch's unique rules and stratagems. I think this lack of Firstborn is another nail in the coffin for the beloved Firstborn Marines that have been the face of 40k since day one. Games Workshop announced a while back they are ceasing production of some of the original Firstborn models, including the classic box knot, which I absolutely love. To be fair, as soon as Primaris were announced, I knew the death knell had chimed for the Firstborn Marines, and it was just a case of when, not if, they are phased out. Anyway, I digress. From a painting point of view, it's all black with a silver arm, and then you can do a single shoulder pad, any damn colour you want, to represent one of the over 1,000 plus chapters they are drawn from. Storyline wise, I like the idea they are the best of the best, and deployed to only the most deadly situations involving Xenos armies, and then they need to undergo the most dangerous of mission to take out the enemy leadership. But on reflection, this is pretty much the law around every Space Marine chapter. Be genetically enhanced superhumans that are only sent into the worst engagements, that the Guard can't handle with its limitless amount of troops, tanks and artillery shells. But if you like the idea of your Space Marines being Special Marines, the Special Forces of Space Marines, then the Deathwatch chapter has your name all over it. And there we have it. That brings us to the end of this video. If you laughed or learnt anything, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and if you are already subscribed, then don't forget to share this video with somebody who could do with some Noob-Splaining in their life. Also, leave a comment on your favourite part. I do try and interact with every comment. But if you made it this far, thank you, and I'll see you next time.